The Mandalorian Season 3 is done, it's out, it's finished, and a lot of people seem to have mixed feelings about how it turned out, especially when compared to the previous 2 seasons. Although this season didn't end on a gigantic cliffhanger, heartbreaking ending, there were still a lot of memorable moments. Today I'm going to go through and rank every episode in the series from worst to best. Also, let me know your ranking down in the comments below. I'd love to know if you agree with my ranking, which you probably won't. No. Or if you strongly disagree, which you're more likely to. Yes. I can't wait to read your opinions on Daddy Daycare in space. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. Coming in at number 8, this is possibly going to be controversial, but I'm putting in Chapter 19, The Convert. This episode honestly just didn't do it for me, as it was mostly focused on Dr. Pershing and didn't really have too much to do with Mandalorian. I understand they're trying to do a lot of world building here and setting up what I think the ranges of the New Republic series was going to be, and when I learned that this episode was going to be the longest in the series at about an hour, I was excited going into it, thinking we were going to get a lot of time with the Mandalorian and Grogu and seeing their adventure develop. That wasn't the case, as most of the episode felt kind of like filler of Dr. Pershing kind of going around as the writers explored what it means to be in the New Republic.
Yellow travel biscuits from the ration bags.
And what was happening on Coruscant in the post-Empire era. The pacing of this episode I found to be slow. The plot twist that Elia Kane was actually working against Dr. Pershing I didn't find all that surprising. And I know the writers are likely still setting up what's happening with the cloning programs later on in some other season of some show, whether that's Mandalorian or Ahsoka or somewhere else. It was a bit disappointing that none of this really got resolved this season. The Dr. Pershing basically had his mind wiped, and he'd been a character we'd known since season 1, and we were always curious about what he was up to in the background, and that as far as we know to this point, based on what happened in the season finale, Moff Gideon's cloning program is no longer existent, although we can speculate that there's more to it than what he had going on Mandalore. That said, I really enjoyed the opening of this episode, set on Kalevala, with Mando base jumping out of Bo-Katan's ship, falling to this landing platform, and then piloting his N1 Naboo starfighter to take out these TIE interceptors. This entire sequence was so exciting, and honestly, one of the best in the entire season. Yes. It's just too bad it was short-lived and most of this episode was occupied by what was happening with the High Republic. Number 7 on my list is Chapter 17, The Apostate, Episode 1 of Season 3. This episode, I think, is where the problems of Season 3, The Mandalorian, began, with Season 3 feeling a bit aimless when compared to 1 and 2. In a lot of ways, this episode felt like a recap of what had happened at the end of Season 2, and also recounted for the events of the Book of Boba Fett, which I know a lot of people didn't necessarily watch.
Like a bantha.
And it felt like the writers assumed that, like they had to explain why Mando was doing what he was doing, why he was going to Mandalore, and also why he was once again reunited with Grogu. Although this was part of her character development, Bo-Katan being completely aimless in this episode, just sitting on this chair on Kalevala looking all broody in her castle, just felt a bit strange. Like, she's here all alone, she's given up hope, I get it, but surely she'd be doing something else, right? I mean, at least polishing her armor or something like that. The introduction of the pirates on Navarro I also thought was a bit weak, and I know this is likely setting up the villains in Skeleton Crew, that's been the rumor that's going around. But there again lies the problem. Certain moments of Season 3 feel like they're setting up something for the future of Star Wars rather than just focusing on what's here happening right now. Really cool to see the Space Whales returning here from Star Wars Rebels, but this was the only reference or mention to them in the entire season. Cool little Easter egg, but something that didn't really have any further meaning beyond this. I also enjoyed seeing more of the Mandalorian's tradition as they build this part of the lore, as Ragnar is baptized as a Mandalorian. A giant crocodile beast coming out of nowhere. As fun as this was, I was kind of like, why would the Mandalorians set up camp right next to a lake that has a giant crocodile monster in it, and then baptize their children on the side of the lake? Seems like a dangerous idea. I get that this is probably also protecting them from outside sources, external, the Empire, that kind of thing, but seriously, their kids nearly got eaten. I'm pretty sure some Mandos died in this scene. Number 6 is Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore, which is Episode 2 of the season. Okay, so Mando goes to meet Pelimoto because he needs parts to repair IG-11, which is the only droid he trusts, but then somehow she convinces him to take this R5 unit with him, and it really didn't take much to convince him, and I was like, really? Is he that gullible? She's swindling him into this deal. That said, I really did like R5 as a character later this season, but I don't really understand why he needed him to test the atmosphere of Mandalore, and also why no one else had really flown here following the Great Purge. purge. If you can just enter the atmosphere without being killed by the giant storms above, then why had no other Mandalorians come back to see if their homeworld was actually okay? Really enjoyed the fight scenes with the Darksaber here, and also it was pretty awesome watching Mando explore down into the caves using his jetpack to get around. I thought it was quite surprising that he so easily got captured by this crab droid, and when Grogu goes to get the help of Bo-Katan, she suddenly has a change of heart and is like, oh, Mando's in trouble, I'll come save him. Maybe secretly she loves him, I'm not sure, but in the previous episode she was like, never come back here, and now she's like, I'll come save his life yet again. Watching her fight scenes and character development in this episode was also a highlight, especially as you saw her begin to question her Mandalorian faith, watching how Din is so devout to the cause. I thought it was pretty funny when Din Djarin just fell in the bath. Like he flew all the way to this planet to have a bath, and then he slips and just falls in and nearly drowns, and she needs to come save him. He was just getting himself into trouble this entire episode. But I liked what this episode was setting up with the idea of the mythosaur, her seeing it at the end, and hopefully us seeing more of that in a later season. At number 5, we have Chapter 20, The Foundling. Okay, first, I just think we have to get this out of the way. We have to talk about the Order 66 scenes. Seeing Ahmed Best return as his Kelleran Beck Jedi character was amazing, and the fact that he's the one who saves Grogu from the Jedi Temple, also incredible. The fact it was also the Nabooans who helped save Grogu, I can't wait to see where this plot angle goes, and can't wait to keep learning more about Grogu's backstory. I was so glad we finally got more Grogu backstory in this episode. Even though I think we're all starting to agree Order 66 is getting a bit overplayed, almost every Star Wars thing they've released in the past few years has had it. It was Clone Wars Season 7, it was Jedi Fallen Order, it was The Bad Batch, it was The Mandalorian, it was in Obi-Wan, it's everywhere. But it was still really cool seeing Grogu's backstory developed through his experience of Order 66. The opening of this episode with Grogu fighting against Ragnar in this little game was kind of weird, if I'm being honest. Grogu getting the wrist rocket thing. And also the fact Ragnar gets taken by another giant beast. Kind of felt like whenever the writers need something big and interesting and exciting to happen, they're just like, let's make up another giant beast to come and take one of the kids. I enjoyed watching the Mandalorians work together. Bo-Katan's character development was also really cool. Her talking to the armorer, and also being accepted by this particular Mandalorian cult. You could see her once again questioning everything she'd kind of been brought up in, and her history we know about in the Clone Wars and in Star Wars Rebels. I felt like it was all coming full circle with her interactions with the armorer. At number 4, we have Chapter 24, The Return, the season finale. The action sequences, I think, were definitely the best part of the season finale this time around. Watching all the Mandalorians work together, seeing the scale of Moff Gideon's base, and also questioning whether this was the real Moff Gideon or not, are all things that I think made this finale interesting. That said, I felt the pacing was way too quick. This episode was only 38 minutes long, and that's including the credits. And I wish certain moments in this episode would give him more time to breathe and develop. Absolutely epic watching Din Djarin basically turn into John Wick and take out so many of these Imperial super commandos, whatever they're called, and then also take down the Praetorian Guards with the help of Grogu. This is one of the first times we've seen Grogu assist Din Djarin in combat, and it was so cool to see him subtly using the Force to push away the Praetorian Guards' weapons so that Din Djarin could get the jump on them. Always cool seeing more of the Darksaber, but I really liked that it was destroyed at the end of this episode, that Moff Gideon crushed it, and that it's likely not going to be a symbol of power anymore. The Mandalorians are evolving and changing, and are now united. I do wish there was a bit more development with this. I wish there was more tension between them at certain times during the season, and also the take back of Mandalore seemed to be a lot simpler than I think everyone expected it to be, but I think there's going to be more to it than what we've just seen at the end of this season. Really interesting that the show is almost returning to its roots as well, becoming more of an episodic Western style series, with the bounty hunting adventures of Mando and Grogu seemingly set to resume in season 4. Although, all that said, I really didn't like how easily Din Djarin escaped at the start of this episode, especially with what the previous episode set up, and also the fact that Moff Gideon was watching where Din Djarin was the entire time on his map. Why did he not send more guards? Did he want him to escape? Is he just a complete fool? Very likely. Alright, top 3, here we go, and this is going to be controversial. At number 3, I put Chapter 22, Guns for Hire. Yes, the one with Jack Black. Now, I know a lot of people didn't really like this episode, and I'd love to hear your opinions down below. For me, this one did something really different. It was quirky, it was weird, but it showed a different side of the characters and a different side of Star Wars we hadn't really seen too much of this season. The opening with the Quarrens was super weird, but honestly made me laugh quite a bit because it was just so strange. Quarren and Mon Calamari in love and being raided by a Mandalorian ship who's trying to steal them back. What?
No, I love you.
And then also getting to see what an idyllic society looks like in Star Wars, with Jack Black and Lizzo playing Captain Bombardier and the Duchess. High society in Star Wars we saw a lot of in Andor, with everything happening with Mon Mothma, and it's really cool to see how that exists outside of the core worlds. Also loved Christopher Lloyd's character, his reference to Count Dooku, saying that Count Dooku was a visionary and was cut down in his prime. I love references like that, and I really enjoyed the fact this one became kind of like a murder mystery, with Mando and Bo-Katan developing over their hunt for whatever droids are malfunctioning in this city. Great to see battle droids back as well, especially being used in a different capacity to what we see them at other times. Mando's character was a bit inconsistent at times throughout the episode. He was super patient talking to the Ugnaughts and really seemed to know what he was doing, but when it came to dealing with the droids, he went completely the other way, although he still did get a result, I guess. Now, I know a lot of people didn't like the final scene of this episode, where it was revealed that Bo-Katan was the rightful owner of the Darksaber because Mando was defeated way back in episode 2 of this season by that crab droid thing, and then Bo-Katan defeated the crab droid. But remember, when it comes to the Darksaber, it's all about the story and the legend and what people are willing to believe, and clearly the other Mandalorians were happy to accept this, so here we are. Definitely a whack and weird episode, but it had me laughing a couple times, and was something I really wasn't expecting. Now please go tell me why you hated it.
Yes.
At number 2 for season 3, I put chapter 21, The Pirate. I loved Captain Teva's involvement in this episode, seeing that he was basically just a lone pilot of the New Republic who's trying to do good in the galaxy and has to deal with bureaucracy and the inability or lack of interest in getting things done. Cool to see that even following the Empire, the New Republic is almost just as corrupt in different ways. I enjoyed his tense interactions with the Mandalorians, but his air of confidence, and also seeing more of Mandalorian lore, the fact each one of them has to hold the hammer when they're speaking to the group. I thought that was hilarious. Amazing. Subtle details. And I have to be honest, seeing the Mandos all work together to take down the pirates, there were certain moments in this fight that were just absolutely brutal, and I loved. Gorian Shard, I think, is an amazing character, just because he's all green, seaweed, furry, weird space alien. It's that kind of goofy Star Wars that I really like. Seeing the Armorer in action for the first time, really, destroying everyone with her hammer, and watching as the Mandos took back the city, and the Armorer setting Bo-Katan out on her quest to walk both paths, being able to once again remove her helmet. A lot of fun moments in this episode, and I feel even though the pirate thing was a bit of filler, this one moved the plot of the entire series forward in a good direction. And I honestly just love that Gorian Shard is like the Davy Jones of space. And coming in at number 1 is chapter 23, The Spies. I am the spy! Easily the best episode of the season, the cold opening on Coruscant, with Elia Kane meeting the probe droid, then speaking to Moff Gideon, the reveal of Moff Gideon's base, his Imperial commandos, the ray shields even, the setting, the tone, the Shadow Council, the inclusion of Gilad Palaeon, the mentions of Grand Admiral Thrawn, the mentions of cloning, Mandalorian factions agreeing to work together. Possibly the best Baby Yoda scene we've had in the entire show.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Where he gets the IG-12 mech suit. This is like the toy Din Djarin never wanted him to have. The Mandalorian fleet all traveling to Mandalore together, landing on the planet's surface for the first time, finding the Mandalorian survivors. Skinny Pete! Another giant monster for how many times this season. And then the battle with the Imperial Mandalorian Super Commandos, the reveal of Moff Gideon's Dark Trooper suit, his entrance was totally epic, them capturing Din Djarin, the escape, and the final stand of Paz Vizsla with the reveal of the Praetorian Guards. This episode had so much, and I thought the pacing was great, and it really set up for what I was hoping would be an excellent finale. Didn't love the finale, but this episode for me was the standout of the entire season, and with that said, I'd love to know what your ranking of Mandalorian Season 3 episodes are, and how you compare this season to Seasons 1 and 2. For a lot more on The Mandalorian, you probably know I have a clips channel, daily clips and uploads there, a lot of stuff about Mando over there, go check that out. Or watch this video here for a breakdown of some questions you might have about Jedi Survivor. And thank you for watching this. My name's Andrew, I'll catch you soon.